So we're here to solve this Nurikabe variation by Ashish Kumar. It's a Skyscrapers variation, and if you've seen this in other shading styles, it has some pretty common ways it plays out at the start, actually, in all the puzzles I think we've done. I think almost every author has used something like an external 3 clue. And an external 3 clue, if you're just going to see 3 sizes of shaded groups, the smallest set of places that can be is 1 plus 2 plus 3, and you'd have to have at least 2 unshaded spaces before those. And so you'll end up seeing that in a typical grid, 1 and 2 and 3, or 1 and 2 and 5, or 1 and 2 and 4 are kind of possible routes. 1 and 3 and 4 is also possible, but in this case we already have 1 unshaded cell, so we actually just have 9 left to go. And so in some extreme, 1 and 2 and 3 can go as large as 1, 2, 4, but notice that there's no option for like 1, 3, 4 or anything else. So the first group is always size 1, the next group is always size 2, and then we're going to have another sort of 3 or 4 at the end. And so if you think through how those sort of play into the grid, there's always 1 degree of slack, which means when we have a group of size 3, we'll know 2 cells for sure, and we have a group of size 2, we'll know 1 cell for sure. And that comes from seeing that in this coloring, this is a group of size 3, this is a group of size 3, and also it's possible to have a group of size 4, but in all cases, these 2 cells are part of the shaded part to make the skyscraper possible. If either of these cells was not shaded, there's no way to put 3 long section into the grid here or here. You see that there's no way to get a 2 and a 3 up top. So these are always part of the shaded section. Similar logic will say that this is always a shaded cell. If this were not a shaded cell, there's no place to now put a 2 long group that's between the 1 and this 3 or larger at the end. So skyscraper logic will often be putting in these intermediate extreme values as key steps, and this is where if we transition back to our normal Nurikabe thinking, we actually put a lot into the grid that's useful. Marking this as an island cell up top forces the ocean to come around, forces the 6th island to come and wrap, which forces these shapes into the grid. Putting these shaded cells in has made a 2 by 2 box almost, so this must be part of an island, and we have to have tight packing to this corner to make this be a valid ocean connectivity space. So we get this pattern into the grid. We've got almost a 2 by 2 box here, and we have to have an island cell take one of those 2 remaining cells. An island always has to take this bottom one to be able to reach to the top. That's not going to actually work because we'd isolate on the left, so this ocean extends. We've made a 2 by 2 box almost, so this is island. We have to put in this to get 1, 2, 3 for the skyscraper clue, which is now satisfied. And so the 7 extends out like so. And so that finishes the star of the grid. On the left side, there are still not too many things to do with a clue like this 1 coming down or this 2 coming up, but this 2 coming across is now getting some size to it. It's got at least 2 cells used, which means the remaining part of it is going to be 3 long, and it looks like it has a set of options for it, but one of the things to note is that if the 3 long is packed, or it can be larger than 3, but if the 3 long is packed all the way over to the far right, you're going to be isolating too many cells for this 8 island to be able to exist. And so the largest group in this grid can start only as far right as this cell, or only as far left as this cell. And notice that where this could be 3, this could be 3. This cell right here is another example of a cell that is always shaded. There's no way, if this is not shaded, that you can get this skyscraper clue on the outside to work, because you'll either isolate this 8 or you'll have too many groups here. So marking this in marks this cell as an island, marks this over as part of the ocean. We can never come down and take this cell on the edge of the grid as another island cell. You'll isolate the island however you do it. You'll isolate the ocean by the island however you do it, so we get something like this. We have to ask ourselves, how do we want to get the ocean out of this corner now? We've got 2 routes. And one route is going to take these 2 cells and put a 4 into the grid that needs to then have a larger section like 5 to complete the puzzle for the skyscraper clue to work. And the other is to come up this channel. And the thing to note is that route going to the across is going to make this clue invalid however we try to complete it. So we've got to come up this channel instead, not across this 8th row. And so we get this into the grid. We get the ocean for connectivity. We need to get 7 cells around this island, so that's here. We get this pattern in. We still need to get a valid set of islands and oceans for this 2 clue, so we have to put in the 3 that uses exactly these cells, leaving this for the 8 to be extending. Notice the 8 has to take all these cells. It's got one more to go, and whichever it'll take will leave an island here. We now have to work through this skyscraper clue, and this is where an interesting pattern has started to form, where we actually now have 2 2x2 boxes, this one here and this one here, where we have to have at least one of the cells that I've marked near the X as part of an island shape. And there's an intuitive step you can make, which is if we actually took this cell, both of the island cells go around it, which means the ocean keeps extending up. And we're again making a pretty long ocean section, now 4 cells shaded, that needs to have 5 or more as the next group around it. And so a look ahead kind of logic to do here is that connecting through the center cell forces 2 cells through this next space, and so that's going to be problematic. And so we're highly inclined to make that into an island cell. And in doing that, we immediately force, just because of the count of cells around it, that this is the last cell for the 8, this is the last cell for the 5, and this island is coming up this channel. So the ocean connects, this comes in, ocean connects. For all these, we need to still satisfy the skyscraper clue, so this 2 group now has a 3 group up top, puts in the rest of the islands around it. We've got the 7 coming over to the cell. It needs one more island cell, which is one of these 2. It will always leave this as another ocean. This 8 can take as many as these 7 cells, but this will always be an 8th. So this is ocean. We can't come up and take this cell, but now doing that, we make a forced island, which can't come down. Instead over here, so we force this and finish the grid like so. So the interplay that Ashish put in here between the skyscrapers rule and the Nurikabe rules are pretty elegant. It starts like a lot of the skyscrapers in a 10x10 grid do, with the 3 clue, putting some force shaded cells, in this case both of these cells being force shaded, and also this cell being force shaded. And then that eventually worked over the bottom edge as we got some of the shape into the grid, particularly thinking about how do we make this 2 clue work with a 2 and a 3 group. Marking this cell right above the 5 as an ocean cell was key to get that space to happen. And then finally using this 2 skyscraper clue and seeing that a channel through these cells would be problematic. So a bit of look ahead throughout, but always interplaying the skyscraper clues with how they would interact with the Nurikabe logic, particularly 2x2 shading and connectivity. So hopefully you got a sense of how to think through all that logic at one time, got some tips and tricks that will apply to future puzzles of this sort, and we'll see you again soon.